Now, around about now, the US Congress is starting to vote on whether to release all of the Epstein files. You'll remember that yesterday, President Donald Trump changed his position and stopped trying to persuade Republicans to block the information coming out. He also lambasted one of his former greatest supporters, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a traitor for opposing him over Epstein. Earlier on today, she hit back.
These women have fought the most horrific fight that no woman should have to fight, and they did it by banding together and never giving up. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
Wow. Let's go now to Barry Levine, the investigative journalist and author of The Spider, an account of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal web. Barry, thanks for joining me. Everybody's got bated breath about these documents coming out, assuming that the Congress votes the way we assume. Do you think we're going to learn a lot more that we didn't know before?
Well, I think, first of all, this has to go from the House to the Senate, and then, of course, President Trump has to ink this thing before we actually can see these files. In fact, we could have seen these files this past summer, but his Justice Department held them up, and we've been battling over this since July. But I do think if we finally get to the files, it will help the victims heal. You know, they have been traumatized in this story, going back all the way to 2008 when Alexandra Acosta struck a deal, non-prosecution agreement deal with Jeffrey Epstein, gave him a slap on the wrist for solicitation of a minor and sent him to jail for less than a year. And in fact, at that time, the victims were supposed to be informed of that government decision, but they were not informed. So they have been lied to all along. And I think that if we finally open these files, it will help them deal with this trauma that they've suffered.
And in terms of dealing with the trauma, how important is it, do you think, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we call him now, comes over to Congress and gives evidence?
Well, listen, the FBI, I've been following this story for a very long time. The FBI has done everything they could to offer him an interview, and he has refused thus far. I frankly don't think he'll ever cross the ocean and come here for an interview. I think he's done talking about this. But he has suffered his own sentence. Well, it's not a criminal sentence that he suffered at the hands of the people in England, and he's had his titles taken away by his brother. So, you know, I'm interested in getting down to the bottom of Representative Thomas Massey, who's been spearheading this release of these files, said recently that there's 20 men that he's aware of that were participants in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. These are very influential and important individuals. They include 6 billionaires, one of them from Canada. They include people in finance, people in government, people in the American music industry. So I want to find out in those files what the FBI has done over the years to investigate these men and why, if in fact these men took part in sex trafficking, why aren't they not behind bars?
So you think, as a result of these files being released, assuming they are released, that we're going to see some very powerful, very well-known people in deep, deep public trouble?
Well, I think that's the case. Now, will we actually learn their identities? I don't know. because already House Speaker Johnson today is talking about redactions of informants and victims, and says there may be material in there that could even be related to the CIA or National Security Agency. But what we'll see are the depositions. Even if there's redactions, we'll be able to see what victims told the FBI and law enforcement about these men. And we can also see what steps the FBI took in terms of apprehending these individuals. Did they put them under surveillance? Did they check their emails? Did they check their phone logs? Were they able to corroborate any of these victims' accounts?
And when it comes to Epstein himself, of course, he's long dead. Do you believe there are still people who worked very closely in making all of this happen? In other words, the operatives around him who will be worried about this coming out?
Oh, I do think so. And we know from Senator Ron Wyden, who went down the financial road and found that there had been more than $1 billion of wire transfers that Jeffrey Epstein sent, moved money through not only American banks, but through Russian banks to pay individuals around the world. I believe that there are fixers, there are quote unquote model fixers of an international variety who sent young girls on planes promising them modeling contracts, but instead they ended up on Jeffrey Epstein's island, his Lolita Island, where they were sexually abused. We need to find out who those men are, and we need to prosecute them.
My final question, Barry. Donald Trump, as we've just said, changed direction dramatically this week about whether or not these files should be released. And he now says his party and presumably himself, nothing to hide, nothing to see here. Do you think that's true? Do you think he's really not concerned, or is this just force majeure? He looks at the numbers ranged against him in Congress, thinks, I've got no hope of winning this. I might as well just be realistic about it.
Well, the reality is we don't fully know Donald Trump's involvement. We know that Pam Bondi, his attorney general, said that his name is in the FBI files. The emails that were released last week came from the Epstein estate, and there's some very peculiar emails related to President Trump in terms of his knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein. But we still don't know exactly what he saw, if he saw anything, what he knew about Jeffrey Epstein's conduct, and did he tell anybody? These are questions that I'm hoping that not only will we learn about him in the files, but also former President Clinton. There's a lot of questions that we still have to answer in this investigation.
The world will be watching. Barry Levine, thank you very much for talking to LBC.